the Treaty of Lisbon is the best treaty we have, and from the Constitutional Treaty we saved, as we always say, some 98% of the substance, and therefore I think now it is the right time to start again a vision forward, and our proposal, not to call it again a constitution, because I saw what sort of emotions this has created. We propose something like a fundamental treaty. We call it a fundamental law, because this is a bit in between what you could interpret as a constitution and still a treaty, because we are not creating with even the fundamental law a new state. It will still be an element and a political institution of the states that have created this European Union. There is no doubt that Euroscepticism is growing in many countries, and we can fear that the next European Parliament could be the most anti-European Parliament that ever has been elected, and that would be a catastrophe, and we still have 7 months to avoid this catastrophe. We have seen that the crisis of the last 3 years was badly managed. It was really not well done, and people got skeptic. They say, my God, is that really keeping together? Is that falling apart? Is it costing too much? And all these questions are in people's mind, and there is no really leadership in Europe to take really the flag of the European idea and explain where we are going to. So we decided with this project of a fundamental law to provoke a debate, and I'm happy that so many share with us tonight the debate about it, because we have to set a contrapoint to this skepticism, this creeping defeatism, these negative feelings. And a colleague of us from France said, look, we have a Front National, we have to create a Front Européen. And in fact, I hope that in the civil society, it will not be possible on the level of political parties, because in an election we are competitive, but on the level of civil society, you have to create a Front Européen. And I hope that the European movement can be one platform, but the industry, the trade unions, the churches, other elements of civil society have to come out now for a pro-European cause and fight in the next 7 months to keep the anti-Europeans as low as possible. We will not avoid them, but they should not really double or triple their number in the parliament. That is a very big objective. The people have to get a sense of ownership of Europe, and that is maybe our biggest problem, that Europe is Brussels. It's us and the institutions. It's not all of us. It's not everybody. In a democracy, I think participatory democracy is one element how ownership can be expressed. And no doubt a core element of our fundamental law is to come away from this executive federalism that we have by all the councils.
In fact, this is not an economic crisis what we are living for the moment here. It's, in my opinion, a political crisis and an institutional crisis. And the proof of that is simply to look to the world. If you look to the world, there is no crisis in China, there's no crisis in India, there's no crisis in Brazil, there's no crisis in the United States of America, who have a good growth for the moment, there is no crisis in Japan. We have economic growth on the African continent, for example, between 5 and 6% the last years. There is only a crisis in Europe. And this crisis in Europe has a link with the fact that we have a political problem. And the political problem is that we are not a confederation, we are not a federation, we are, I don't know what we are, in fact, in the European Union, but we have a system that cannot work, certainly not if you have a single currency, as we have introduced more than 10 years ago. And that is our problem for the moment. Our problem is that we have still an intergovernmental, weak system, with the single currency, while the single currency requests, in fact, a good state authority behind that single currency. Because I'm always saying maybe the state can exist without a currency, and there are a number of examples of that, but the currency cannot exist without the state authority behind it. What we need is not to ask the people, the citizens, to pay more. No, they have to pay directly. So there is a direct link between citizens paying for their European Union, and if we do that, then automatically the people shall be more interested in what's happening with their money in that union. We foresee this fundamental law the possibility for the union to create also a more social Europe, in the sense that we are saying if you want to have a sustainable system, then on economic, social policy, labor policies, fiscal policies, you need also at least a minimum of convergence. Because if you don't have a minimum of convergence, the system is not coherent. And that's one of the reasons of our crisis. The crisis is that we started with the currency, and instead of a convergence of economies, we have seen a divergence of these economies the last 10 years. And so we are saying it's not to Europe to decide on what specific pension system every country has to have. It's not to Europe to decide on what specific labor market organization we have to have. But at least on the European level we have to decide on the framework. So that we have to decide on the motorway that every country has to follow. And every country can choose. You can choose the left side of the motorway to avoid social dumping, or the right side of the motorway to guarantee the competitiveness of the economy, but they have to follow that motorway. And not what happened now, a German truck coming from one side and a Greek little car coming from the other side, and the collapse what we have seen. So I use this image to tell you that what we don't propose is that there is a full harmonization of all policies by the Union. No, what we are saying, we need a convergence policy with minimum and maximum values decided on the European level, and then also social policies, and then it has the competence and the responsibility of the different parts of the Union, the member states, to implement it. And then the last point, national parliament. Sorry, there are two democracies. There is the European democracy, and for that you need a European parliament who is fully responsible. And you have the national democracy, that's for the national parliaments work. And we cannot mix it. If we mix it, we shall create a huge mess. I know that a number of countries want to mix it, and to put, for economic governance. This is not necessary to have a mixed system in the Eurozone with national parliaments and European parliaments. That should be an enormous mess. That cannot work at all. You have the European Parliament that elected by the European people, responsible for the European policy, and you have a clear, have to cut off what is the responsibility of the national parliaments and of the national authorities and the national democracy.
European political parties didn't exist. It was just a name. The Party of European Socialists could not even buy a pencil. They have not been a legal entity. It was only a name. They came together once in a while. So the Liberals or the Greens, I think the EPP was the only one that had already a statute under Luxembourg law. So we formed the first legislation, and now we have 12 or 13 European political families that have registered, have been accepted from far right to far left. So there is a huge choice for different kinds of Europe on the elections. What we don't have is exactly that those European political parties can compete for mandates. There is not European transnational mandates where they can fight for.
I think that here in this room, the most of us would like to see the future approaches leading to the deepening of the integration, to the improving of the cooperations. But you know that not all governments in Europe are thinking in the same way. We have debate on repatriation of powers. We have proposals on review or revision of competencies. And I'm absolutely sure that once the issue of the opening of the treaties is on the table, that these governments, these member states would be first to come with a shopping list, what they would like to repatriate, what they would like to get back on the national level. And as I know the dynamics in the Council, it would be one country asking for one exception, another country asking for one opt-out, and then it becomes some kind of prestigious political game, or it would be like the measure of the pride for each prime minister to get something, to claw something back on the national level.
We've got a lot more work to do. Let's go on to complete the great project. Thank you very much for being here. And now